Good afternoon. I call to order the City of Ocean Shores Planning Commission meeting. The date is January 24th, 2023, 2 p.m. We are meeting live in the Ocean Shores Library. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Bricker. Here. Commissioner Ward. Here. Commissioner Barr.
Here.
Paul is not here. Commissioner Bachman.
Here.
All right. Next order of business would be approval of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda? So move. Any second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, unanimous. All righty. Do we have the meeting minutes attached?
I didn't see.
They're
them.
not
I
attached.
didn't see them.
All right, so we're gonna have to approve them next time.
Yeah.
Okay, I sent them.
Back, man.
Yeah, we don't have a folder for this.
Hey, you
year
spelled my
yet.
name wrong.
We don't have a folder out on our site yet for this year. so-
Okay, if Sarah's been
Yeah,
training.
that's kind of what I figured.
We'll do that. All righty.
It's fine.
So no approval of the minutes. Now we will open the floor for public comments. Any public comments in the room? Any public comments on Zoom, right?
Hi, Gary. Hey, my name is Vida, not
Vida.
Vida.
You do that every time too.
I know, it's only been a year, so, no, I don't have any comments, thank you.
I just got Chance Lamar, so. You're next. Lisa.
No worries.
All righty, any reports? I guess nobody's had any visits or activities, so we probably don't have any reports. The only report I would have as a commissioner is I did meet briefly with the mayor, on a couple of issues. I sent him the 40% letter that we had voted on. However, Marshall has come up with there may be additional issues with that new provision that shouldn't be applied to commercial, right?
Yes,
Siding, is there anything else in there?
the metal siding, I wasn't sure if they intended for that to apply to commercial structures in the discussions. Dan, you were here for that,
Yeah, I don't think we would. No, I won't.
you don't think there was an intent to?
No.
Okay, so that'll be one more thing that we'll need to exclude from the commercial provisions.
So basically, I will, in the next 2 weeks, look at that entire set of the code and make sure there's nothing else. In fact, most of it won't apply, because there's things like relief and fascia specifications and architectural standards. So probably most of that section needs to just say doesn't apply.
When we were talking about it, it was all R1, R2, R whatever.
I'm aware of that, so it just happened that it wasn't clear, it wasn't commercial, so we'll have to get that cleared. Other than that, he also was quite happy with where we're going on the business district is the other report, on the Gateway District. The only question is that's probably technically a rezone, completion of either a district or a sub-zone within the B1 zone. But that has to go through public hearing, right?
Well, yeah, if it's gonna be rezoned, then yes.
It's a redefinition of a portion of the B1 zone with some more stringent standards, so it really has to be. We were discussing, is there advantage to making it a district versus its own zone, and there really isn't. But we could come up with it. Can you think of anything?
No,
I think we're still gonna have to do the same thing, public meeting.
yeah, either way, it's gonna be yeah.
Okay.
Public meeting through the planning commission and then through the city council.
So I think the public hearing is a zoning change, and then go to the city council.
Yep.
As a public hearing. Okay.
One more thing, different subject. now.
Go ahead.
We don't have a legislative committee, but if we did. Introduced in the legislature is House Bill 1110, which basically requires in cities of over 6,000 people, of which we are one, a allowance to basically has state take over our zoning codes with respect to single family residences and allowing up to 6 plexes on residential zone property. Not only allowing, but requiring the city to adopt that.
Yeah, that was brought up at council last night.
Oh, was?
Yes, Scott Anderson brought it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's brought it to Scott's attention, so
It's Similar bill was introduced last session, didn't make it. This one has some Republican sponsors this time, so we never know.
Yeah, it's, that one, we don't know. Basically, it's really hard to read, but as I've read it, it abolishes R1
Pretty much.
pretty much.
And most places that have a need for that don't have any empty lots on which to build affordable housing. We got a ton of them, so how that works in with our mixer, I don't know, but. Seattle, you can't find an empty lot to build a house, well, obviously there's a need for it here. It's 3,000 empty lots at least right now.
I mean, yeah, nobody's arguing it makes sense here. Makes more sense to look at the minimum square footage requirement, as you've discussed, and some other ways to make middle housing possible as opposed to allowing duplexes. And the point I had with the mayor, maybe we need to at some point count them, is we have probably in excess of 500 multifamily lots still not built on. All around, behind Old Hook, Marine View, there's a large group of multifamily lots already unbuilt on, so if there's a reason to have that sort of housing, there are places to do it now.
Well, this particular bill doesn't have any allowances or special
No, I know,
anything for it.
yeah, we don't, yeah, I'll talk to some of the council members again if I get a chance. I did briefly discuss it with a couple of them, but it really was, they're sort of like disbelief it would happen.
Yeah.
So, I think basically people aren't believing this, the senator would do that. All right. Anything else as far as reports and discussion on old business? All righty. New business, so in accordance with our handbook. Doesn't say the first meeting, but it implies early in the year, we should be having what's called a retreat. That's kind of a term the city council uses, and I thought they went somewhere, they usually go across the street. So it's not like a big thing, so we do our retreats, strategic planning session.
We go to the bar, right?
Can't do that. Can't do that, and so, as I've discussed and talked to people, it's more just a chance for each commissioner to talk about what they see as the big issues facing the city. And what they'd like to see starting to work on this year with the planning commission. So we sort of did that a little bit mid-year last year, but I think it'd be kind of good to bring it back. Then from there, we can talk about which of them we want to start bringing forward. The ongoing business we still have is the business district, and lot clearing is still going on. I'll talk to you briefly about that afterwards, where we're going with that. So old business will be looking at lot clearing, landscaping. That's really the only carryover old business is the Gateway District and lot clearing. So this really is sort of start forming what will be on our agenda in the next year. So I think we'll go ahead and start with Brian. What do you see sort of as the big?
Well, I just have a question. Do we just, is our mandate, is it just have to do with building homes and businesses and stuff like that, or does it have to do with stuff like streetlights and whatnot?
It has to do with anything.
Okay, because I personally, I think that Ocean Shores, Ocean Lake Way and Point Brown is sorely in need of some kind of light, some kind of signal light. I feel like there's so many accidents that happen there. And especially during the summer months with the amount of traffic going down Point Brown, if you're stuck on Ocean Shores Boulevard, you're not getting through there. And the way that the turn lanes go is like you start from way out here and way out here, and it's bound to cause some accidents.
Okay. That's a good one. We've never even looked at that. So looking at traffic signals, traffic safety. Good, we'll get the chief in here. I don't even think she has any safety person, traffic safety, but one step. There's no way.
Unfortunately, it's getting to the point where, nobody wants to see traffic signals go up, but it's unfortunately, we're getting to that point where we just can't ignore it anymore.
Because it was dropped to 30. It drops to 30 right there based on a very bad accident that Bruce Hansen had.
Yeah, but dropping it to 30 has just made it so you can't get through there at all because everybody's going too slow.
Anything else, Brian?
No, that's all I got for you.
Dan, I'm gonna let you go next.
Okay, well, mine kind of got blown away last night. If anybody went to the council meeting and listened to it. Roy Sims is the building officer. Kind of took all my thunder when I was after. Because I'll pass these pictures around and we can talk about it. So just look and pass them back.
Is that house on the lake,
Yeah,
still like that?
still like that. It's just been 14 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
This place is just a piece of garbage.
Nuisance, so did he talk nuisance last night?
Abatement.
He talked abatement.
He talked abatement and he talked about cleaning up properties.
22.
Funny, Dan, I just saw this picture upside down. I was like, oh, it looks like the house on the lake.
I know the house. I've got another address for you, one that works than that, 551 Sandon.
And this, the last picture, one of the pieces of plywood actually fell off the house. So now it's exposed. So I called code enforcement to come out. And you gotta tell them you can come on my property because they won't go on the property. And because it was exposing the inside, they got it fixed. But what Roy was talking about, the abatement thing that they had, it's much broader.
Facing the water.
And it takes, cleaning up properties that, have trash and stuff around them or what excess stuff. And that was my big thing, because my other thing is, on 400 Duck Lake Drive Southeast. This place looks like garbage. So,
There's a few of those around town and I think that's probably what's driven the action that you see with Roy. He's come from a city where abatement, he used the example of one city that he worked for, they were doing 30 or 40 homes a year, total abatement. And it's a maintenance code that we're adopting as opposed to the code that was being used is obsolete, it's no longer code. And we were referencing that. We've done that in a lot of our municipal codes. We just haven't updated them in 20 or 30 years in some cases. And I think we did the things that were need tos, but now we're getting to some of this peripheral code that doesn't apply, you know, and he came in with experience from a large jurisdiction and said, listen, this code does apply to what you guys want to do here. Let's adopt that. And it will streamline the process of abatement and put some teeth in it. So,
yeah, once a person, everybody has issues with their house, they gotta maybe take off siding and that. But how long can you leave it where there's no siding?
yeah,
And that was the big issue, and the code didn't allow for that.
yeah.
But I think what maybe is there's still pieces of the nuisance code that need to be updated to it. Did that get updated when you were on the planning commission? Because there is a specific definition of nuisance, which is different from abatement.
Right.
And I believe in the past, you would often go from a nuisance to an abatement. So I do think, Dan, there may be a thing for us to look at the nuisance code, which is sort of like pre-abatement.
Yeah,
The nuisance code is like no more than 4 vehicles and inoperable vehicles not allowed more than X number of days and that sort of stuff.
yeah, I was told on this particular house, unless the house has structural issues, they couldn't do anything about it. It's okay to have plywood and stand one outside your house for 15 years.
It's a perpetual state of disrepair.
Yeah.
Not a structural issue.
Yeah.
I think the new code that he's wanting to adopt addresses that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I took from last night.
Yeah, I did too.
So,
That's good news. But like I said, there's still may be some work to do with the nuisance side of it, I think, and I'm perfectly willing to put the nuisance part of this on the agenda. Because if they're gonna look at abatement, they also need to look at nuisance, because there's lots of people in violation of the nuisance code all the time.
Yeah.
With inoperable vehicles and that sort of stuff in the yard. So that's something to do, all right? Thorn.
In light of last year's ADU law in the state, we should probably do something about having our code comply with it.
Yeah, I've already. Supposedly that is with the city attorney,
Okay.
don't know if that's going on, that's the same place the transit lodging never went into code that we passed, that we voted on in August or September.
Yeah.
So that's also the city attorney, but yes.
And with respect to transit lodging, the state Supreme Court determined some years ago, actually, in 2014, that. How do I say this? Transit rentals of houses are residential use, not a commercial use. If that affects us, I'm not sure. But in Chelan County, they overturned a code that referenced them as commercial use. Now, the state Supreme Court said that that did not mean that cities could not prohibit rentals, just as they couldn't call them commercial use. What the difference is probably the building code, I don't really know. But this is a case in 2014. What the heck was it? Paul versus city of or Coayas Associates in Chelan County. I'll get to the citation here, but it basically said that no matter how long your rental term is, short or long, it's still a residential use. So whether we have to adjust some definitions in our code for that, that's fine. It probably doesn't change our transit rule at all.
I don't think so. I'll go back and look at it again. But
Our things, our definitions of motel, hotel, things like that need some updating.
yeah. Yeah,
And they're just,
yeah, boarding houses,
yeah, they're just not consistent with common use or anything else. And that's all I got.
minimum square footage. I already mentioned that, but yeah. And I think we can make a run at that this year with a good argument as to when and where.
Yeah.
So. And it may be, I think there's an inclination that we can make a discussion of a citywide minimum square footage as opposed to. You know, very,
It's all over the map.
that's what I'm saying. So whatever we think is the comfort level. You know, for whatever, then that may be citywide and not making it be, you know, lakefront in this area and this and everything else.
That would be like propose an elimination of the table 210
Yeah,
and
just one value.
1750.
It's
Okay,
just one value.
all right.
I mean, that's been on our agenda for a while. The mayor's in the past said, I'm not ready to look at it. And the council is, but I think this middle housing bill has scared them a little bit into being more receptive to alternatives. And, you know, there's a real, it's not us right now, it may come to us. The mayor's had two different discussions with me about not-for-profits working on the same thing you would call middle housing. Housing for middle incomes. The city's having a hard time attracting firefighters, policemen, teachers because of the mean cost of a house.
Well, the middle housing bill, if passed in its current form, will probably eliminate both those issues. I think that's 40% and the minimum square footage.
Yeah.
In fact, it says exactly that.
Yeah, it does. So, but, even if it doesn't pass, I mean, he's asked me personally on the planning commission to think about other ways to do it. I mean, his dream would be that we do an abatement, take possession, and then do sort of a zoning change to allow 2 400 square foot homes on an abated property. For middle income type stuff, and he's really thinking hard about it, this new term called middle income properties, but it's what Richard always said. Housing down for starting school teacher, firefighter, or policeman can afford. And so, there's some not-for-profits, but most of those not-for-profits are more looking at the lower end affordable housing, subsidized housing, that sort of thing. Finding a not-for-profit that has an interest in this, which is basically, and so I ran through the numbers with him at what, $150 a square foot built minimum. Cheap constructed cost, that's minimum, you could do it for that. So then, you know, you're talking 500 square foot home, you're already at. You know, so if you put 2 of them on a lot, then you're doing a little better. But he's asked the city to go look at areas that this could be done.
We also have a quirk in our rules that requires attached housing in multiple family zones or anything above single family. In other words, one roof has to be over 2 dwelling units rather than having them detached.
In our multifamily,
Duplex about, yeah.
I thought there was a provision in there for more than one permitted structure.
Well, there is, but the city has always taken the point of view that doesn't count. So, because they have another,
I'm permitting those today.
oh, good, because they have another rule that says that they one roof or the whole thing, so.
Well, what it says is if you're going to subdivide those lots.
Not a subdivision, this,
No, I'm not in a subdivision, but if you're gonna subdivide, or if you wanna subdivide a structure as a common wall structure, then it needs to have the common roof. If you wanna use that subdivision clause,
Hmm.
you can't create two separate structures. That are not attached and divide that lot into two, but you could build a multifamily common wall structure and subdivide that multifamily lot into two parcels and sell those individually.
could you have 2 detached houses on a duplex lot or complex?
You can, but you cannot subdivide it.
Right,
And the density regulations of the zone would apply, and it varies from 17 or 1800 square feet per unit up to 22 or 24.
and that's another thing we gotta fix, because the density regulations are contradictory in Title 17 and in 18.
In some places, you have lots that are zoned R6, where you cannot, through the density regulations, the square footage of the platted lot is not large enough to build a sixplex, in which case I'm telling. Yes.
Selling the triplexes, but not the twin homes. Yeah, I think we're back. All right. So, anything else, Thor?
No,
Probably enough. Carrie?
So some issues that I see are probably gonna fall under our landscaping, lot clearing. Overall, right? One thing I'd like to see us pay a little more attention to in the city is noxious weed control, particularly Scotch broom. It's getting way out of control, especially out by the dunes. It's kind of scary to see how much is growing out there. Those are are special habitats out there and they will become unspecial if we don't do something.
Yeah, I encourage people to, that and the evergreen and Himalayan blackberry, same thing,
Yes.
noxious weeds in Grace Harbor County. So I encourage people, even those that have wetlands on their property or whatever, to, you know, that they're allowed to go out. And
Yeah,
control that.
and
Yeah,
we do as much. I'm really surprised at how much is growing up along the entrances.
yeah,
And even on vacant lots around, so maybe that's part of the lot clearing, you know, thing that we look at.
Okay,
I think the other thing too is, I believe we're taking the position that we want people to take better care of their lots. Well, we don't have any place for them to put their yard debris. Right, there's no, we don't have a pickup, we don't have a clean pickup, we don't have any place to put it, so it's kind of like, we want you to do this, but. Good luck taking care of your refuse that's gonna be as a result from that.
So on a larger scale, we've got, a refuse, for vegetation only, up in Capalis Beach that's where all the contractors take their, you know, dump truck loads of brush and stuff like that. I don't know if they would accept pickup loads of brush, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's,
well, it's also, this is the second and third term I've had it discussed in the city service,
yeah,
where, you know, somewhere in the city property, they make a debris pile
yeah.
that over time.
Well, I can tell you that we used to have something similar to that down at the wastewater treatment plant when we were using compost material. We were chipping stuff up down there. The problem we had is people kept bringing garbage in. You'd end up with a black plastic bag full of tin cans and, you know, you end up with a tricycle and, you know, stuff like that thrown in with the brush. So
I understand the problem with that.
that kind of ruined it for, and if you're gonna control that, you gotta have staff sitting there monitoring that. And in any one of the sites that we've discussed in the past about where could we do this, you know, brush reception or yard waste or whatever, you're gonna have to staff it, and that's always been kind of a bone of contention. You know, there's always been an effort to try to reduce or create efficiencies, not have more staff sitting around watching, you know, something like that.
Right.
Not that it doesn't need to be considered, and if somebody's got some kind of a creative alternative, you know, I think the planning commission, the counselors, everybody's all ears, so.
I think it is. So, you know, maybe it's like we used to have hazardous waste 2 weekends, 2 Saturdays a month or something with the city can stop it.
Mhm.
Right, not an everyday thing.
Even that, you know what I'm saying?
Once a month.
As opposed
Yeah.
to the open dumping that we used to do.
Have you seen gorse around?
You know, the lots that we had gorst on, were eradicated about 4 years ago or a couple of years ago, but I see it's coming back in a couple of places out on, Ocean Shores Boulevard, just across from, Sand Dune Avenue at the north end there.
Yeah.
And then there was a little patch of it down there, kind of around the south end of town.
Had some there.
By the marina.
Ringview Drive. Had
Yeah.
some over on Lake West Loop, I cut down a couple months ago, yeah.
What's that stuff that looks like bamboo?
Oh, I think it's bamboo.
No, it's
Broadleaf.
it's called Japanese knotweed,
Yeah.
and that's another one that the
Yeah,
county and the state.
On Zanita, I used to own a house on Zanita and there was a whole lot that somebody had cleared years ago that got overtaken with that stuff. And it just kept on creeping, like I'd find shoots going up on the other side of my lot.
So noxious weed control.
Yeah, there's a strategic issue. I agree with that. As long as I can have marketing. Well, it's not just of all of them. All right.
Mess with my wax, Myrtle, I like that stuff.
Until it's next to your house and it's July 4th.
With respect to abatements and that sort of thing, my recollection is those are really expensive to do.
Not really.
Honestly, okay, because
It's part of the city attorney's agreement to send the notices and the letters.
we did some years ago, it cost the city a ton of money for that apartment house. We abated a while ago, but yeah.
Well, it really depends on the condition of the building and if you contract it out or how you do it. Contractor use, but right now, Dean and Herbie and some other guys that now have much more reasonable, cheaper to tear buildings down. They have the right equipment now. Let's put it that way. He's done some work for me, which is complete demolition. So I mean, it's come down, it's not that bad. You could demolish a house for about $15,000. If there's no asbestos,
Yeah,
and any of that sort of stuff. You're gonna pay a couple thousand for the asbestos in the, furnace works.
For the report.
Yeah, for the report. All right, anything else? So I'll go back to some of my greatest hits, and this has come back repeatedly from Phil Kaufman. So it's safe cycling and walking, something I'd like to see us work on. And this is sort of all over the place is where it's at, short, long, medium term, how we can do in pieces, maybe starting with signage and then the dreams of the big loop, all that sort of stuff. But that's something I really would like to see us look at. It's not for us to address, and maybe you can help me talk about, in the SMP, interdoodle wetlands, are they sort of addressing homeowner concerns or anything along that as far as fire prevention and provisions to allow?
You know,
homeowners
the more I talk to ecology, the more strict they talk about those intervenor wetlands. And what's even worse than that is the intervenor wetlands are located in the Dunes Protection Act area, which is like the second most hallowed ground in Ocean Shores. Even if there's no wetlands in those dunes areas west of the first row of parcels, the Dunes Protection Act still requires that you not be cutting vegetation and stuff like that without council action. And I'm not sure that we can't get that. But I can tell you that there's gonna be a lot of opposition from the environmental groups.
Yeah, I know.
Because that is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty unique too. That's the only place you're gonna find it.
My biggest issue, remaining issue, is fire hazard. Buildability is one thing.
Yeah.
Now we're getting fire hazard and up and down that area, up and down. So I mean, I'm gonna put that in there. But I'm not sure that we'll be able to address it. It may be more than you than the planning commission. The other thing I've got is we're gonna take a run at, and it's all related to lot clearing and it's all related to, impervious cover, but I'd like to take a look at early adoption of stormwater discharge. We talked about this a little bit.
Here.
So this is starting to, because I don't know what the trigger is. I thought it was 6,500 population to fall under the rules.
You're talking about the 35% rule?
Yeah, all sorts of rules, but that's the biggest one. 35% hard stand. And again, I think it may help us in both ways. And I'll sort of, because I was last night working this through in my head. Is the 35% rule of impervious area doesn't mean you can't have more, just means you need to do more. On-site retention, treatment, and all that sort of stuff. Addition to that, I also would sort of want to look at like maximum square footage permitted to gravel. I mean, it gets to the appearance issue we have because there's somebody just posted a lot for sale down by the jetty and the drone shot's amazing. It's this little house and a sea of gravel surrounded by a fence.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about? Exactly.
I exactly know what you're talking about.
So I don't want to get this confused with stormwater discharge, but it is related because that's not the best way to get the rain into the ground, is through gravel.
No,
There's better ways to do that. So using this stormwater discharge. It's probably the only environmental thing I see on here, that's for me, which is the most surprising. The stormwater discharge thing, would allow us to look at all of that. As to, wall-to-wall paved lots. If you're gonna do that, then you're gonna do on-site treatment and you're gonna do all that sort of stuff. So it's gonna sort of, maybe and I will do the work on this. It's going through what's in the state NPDES program. Picking what would make sense to pull it early, then making it unique to Ocean Shores where we do have the problems of people think wall-to-wall gravel is low maintenance until they have to go burn the weeds in 3 years. There's other better low maintenance, and this kind of ties into the landscaping,
Yeah.
but it may be a way sort of to work them together
Mhm.
and do all that. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Wow, it's gonna be a quick meeting. Is it normally this quick?
Well, usually we have a regular meeting after this.
Well, we didn't today,
Okay,
and that's our,
usually that quick.
that's good. So anybody else, we're gonna do recall, more chance for issues, and I'm gonna ask you to. What you would like us to look at that we haven't.
Well, I've got things that revolve primarily around wetlands and shorelines that I'm trying to. Come up with alternative language from the Department of Ecology, using other districts or other jurisdictions that seem to be. A little more liberal than how our code is written. We're written basically coming right straight out of the Washington. Administrative code and some of the other guidance that ecologies have, but recently Zach has given me some indications. That, maybe our buffer rules could be relaxed a little bit, whether we allow for administrative reductions up to, say, 25% of buffers. He said in some cases, low value wetlands, internal to certain jurisdictions. Don't require a buffer at all, and that was news to me, and I just heard that like last week. So those are some things that I'm exploring with him a little bit more and trying to get some sample language from other jurisdictions. He said he would help provide some of that. And then, as I get that stuff put together in a format that I think we can start having in a reasonable discussion, then I'll bring that in and we'll see if we can maybe, we're in the middle of our SMP update right now. Our periodic review is I think I've got a draft of that now.
That goes through public meeting as well.
Yeah, that will go through a stakeholder meeting and then public meetings. Exactly. Part of that document is the critical areas regulation, and at some point, once I feel like I have my head wrapped around what we have for two different regulations, and we have two different critical areas regulations in Ocean Shores, one that applies to shorelines and the other that applies to everything else. And I'd like to dovetail those, but it's gonna take a lot of work and time, and that's part of Christine's, contribution to the department is gonna be able to either free me up to work on some of these projects, or she'll work on some of these projects that just require dedication and focus. I can't do it all at this point. And I've been focusing kind of on just trying to keep people working and keep developments moving forward, and I've not given any of this other stuff much consideration, but. So that's kind of what I'm looking for this year is, as Chris comes up to speed in the planning department. I'm gonna try to, look for some things that will, hopefully help development, and help the homeowners. Get closer to what they're looking for.
What would relaxation of buffer zones mean?
Well, and the way I took it, the example that Zach gave me this week, and this doesn't apply to shoreline buffers because some of that stuff is beyond local jurisdictions' control.
Talking about wetlands buffers.
Huh?
Wetland
I'm talking about wetland buffers, yeah. So say a low value category 4, or maybe category 3 wetland that's less than 1,000 square feet. They won't require a buffer, as opposed to right now, if I've got 1,000 square foot, that's a jurisdictional wetland. Because we develop at more than 1 unit or 1 house per acre, we're considered high intensity development. The minimum buffer width on those is 150 feet. So if you take 150 feet, wrap that circle around every little low value wetland we've got in Ocean Shores, the entire city is almost all covered in buffer or wetland.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, get that back to, we went from basically filling wetlands and buffers and giving them no attention to, I've got it locked down pretty tight right now. And now I'm getting indications from ecology that, that we can loosen some of that up. And what I need to do is just get the wiggle room from them in definition. And then, and then we'll propose that to the community. I mean, I think the group sitting here at the table is open to that, but I don't know, how the community feels about wetland and buffer protection or shorelines and some of the other things that always seem to be a hot, passionate topic, so.
So it has to do with the size of the wetland area itself, as well as the quality of what the wetland plants there.
Yeah, the quality of the habitat and the size dictate the buffer, the buffer lengths. And it sounds to me like there's an opportunity to, and the other thing that I heard recently was that some jurisdictions allow for an administrative reduction in buffer widths that would basically prevent a person from having to go to a public hearing to have a hearing examiner grant that reduction. It could be done administratively. That's pretty common. And then if you get over that percentage, then it's forced to go to a hearing. That provides a little bit of flexibility on projects that are right on the edge of needing more oversight.
Anything else?
If I can wrap my head around that, I think we'll have a good year. It's gonna be a challenge.
But nothing else, we're gonna actually be out early today, but that's okay, because I wanted it to be, because I didn't want to get distracted by other stuff, so that works. All right, next meeting is February 14th, 2023, here, and Commissioner Brickner is secretary for that, Brickner? Yeah, Brickner, I'm gonna get every name on tonight, you know, that today.
You guys are all taking your spouses out to dinner that night.
Oh, that is. Yeah, okay. I just need to look at the date. Do we have
Don't
a,
get me in trouble.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.